welcome back to Candid Conversations. That's the name of this podcast, right? Candid Conversations?
Candid.
Yeah, awesome. Welcome back to Candid Conversations, where we talk about gathering feedback for organizations of all sizes. Today, we're reviewing another of the chapters of Candid. Candid is our wonderful book that we produced to try and help you get better feedback from the people you're serving. If you haven't had a chance, go pick up a copy. It's on Amazon, other places, I'm sure. One day it'll be in like Barnes and Noble, and I'll be able to look at it.
Is it not on? I think it's on like
It's online.
Yeah.
I just am waiting for it to be like on one of the shelves.
On a shelf.
Yeah, that's a Barnes and Noble frequenter. I am waiting for that day.
We could place a hard copy at the nearest physical Barnes and Noble.
That works for me. I'll just carry one around and put it in there.
We totally should.
It was one of Amazon's best sellers for a few days there. So I started out of the gate really well.
It was.
We just need it to get picked up by, I think, airports and other places now. That'd be great. Anyways.
I do need to send one to Alexis in Chicago.
Oh.
Yeah.
Shout out Alexis in Chicago, who I don't know.
At Facing Forward.
Oh, sorry, guys, but we need to mention that you both are like clean shaven right now.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm struggling looking at you guys right now. What is going on? And
we should probably say that.
shaven.
This guy over here with no beard.
All right, this is actually the best intro to this chapter possible. So, I've had a beard for 10 years, probably, at this point. And both these guys have seen me without a beard, but it's been a long time. No one else in this podcast booth has seen me without a beard. My kids have never seen me without a beard, right? Like, a lot.
What do your kids say about it?
It was very like Grizzly Adams.
Oh yeah,
earlier this week.
So I didn't shave from November till now, knowing I was going to cut it off at the beginning of the year, right? And I got home and my kids were a little shocked, but my wife was very shocked. I had told her what I was going to do. She just didn't believe me, which really comes back to this topic of when is the right time to ask for feedback. You see, my wife doesn't like me.
Nice.
Not
so what you're saying is you should get feedback before you actually do the action.
Well, yes, exactly. Mark's point is great. I asked for feedback too late. I showed up to her office and said, "What do you think?" And she looked at me and just stared at me, right? And did like multiple takes and a realization of I should never do it again. The funny thing about this is about 10 years ago was the last time I shaved my beard off, and I came home and she didn't know and saw it, and she said, "Never do that again." And so I had the feedback. I just decided to ignore that for 10 years. And
it's not in this chapter, but it probably also could fall into the same to a different category, which is take all feedback seriously. Like, I'm going to do this.
Oh man, I was just thinking that there's a bunch of reasons why we don't take feedback seriously. And this is way off the topic, but I think it'd be helpful to talk about just in general. And one of the reasons that we wave away feedback is because it hurts, right? It hurts our pride most of the time, right? And so when we get feedback, people will say, well, what if it's feedback that's negative? And, I don't know if it's true. The first thing my kids said when they saw me is that I looked like an AI version of dad.
That was my comment.
Yeah, your response was that thing, Graham, and it was spot on.
Yeah, and we were talking earlier today. It's like at this point, you can't really trust any movie that comes out or video. Like I could see anything. I could see Donald Trump hitting the president of Denmark with a sledgehammer, and it would look real, right? Like you could see anything at this point. You really can't trust it because of AI. And people have that same feeling with feedback. Like you can't trust the feedback you're getting because you just don't know, right? You don't know if it's from someone being legitimate or otherwise. And bring this full circle here. I was thinking about it of saying, it really doesn't matter. Is the feedback harmful? Is acting on that feedback going to harm something? And the other thing is the reason you don't want to act on it because it is hurting you, and often it's not necessarily hurting you individually. It's often hurting your pride, right? If regardless what it is, whether it hurts your pride or not, if the suggestion leads to improvement, it's worth doing something about.
Worth exploring, yeah. Flip that around, with people that work at Pulse here, there might have been that same feeling of like, okay, Blake's the CEO. Do I really tell him what I think about him beardless? Does that help or hurt my position at Pulse for Good? and
it would
it's really
probably
that
help
like
them at this point. Yes, tell me.
yeah, but people aren't going to give honest feedback unless it's safe, unless they feel safe to do so. Now, hopefully, everyone could tell Blake whatever they want about his beard, and he'd be like, "Well, that's your opinion."
Well, actually, coming back into the chapter, one of the things that's discussed here, I think it's in this chapter. Sorry if I'm jumping forward, but is the kind of idea of safety in numbers, right? And so I came in yesterday. There wasn't very many people here. A few people saw me, uh, the clean shaven, kind of a random thing, and I get here today, and there's a lot more people, and we're talking about me shaving. And one of the guys said, "Yeah, I didn't say this yesterday, but I'm gonna say it now. It makes you look younger." And I thought it was a funny thing of that, hey, I didn't say it then means you had the thought, but somewhere you decided to filter it. Whether it was a fear, whether you got distracted, whatever it was, you decided to filter that thought. But now there's a bunch of people, I'm not going to say ganging up, but participating in this feedback process of, hey, you look weird. Um, then it feels safe to share. Right. And so
Right.
one of the things nonprofits and anyone that's serving in human services can really take from this is when you provide the place for everyone to share, the fact that other people see other people sharing gives them the cover to say the things that they want to say because they're not afraid that they're going to be the only person that gave feedback here. So some ways that I've seen this is I've seen it in a town hall, right? So gather everybody together. They were actually reviewing feedback that people have given, which is great. Great thing to do is to review the feedback that other people are giving with a larger group of people, not just your staff, but the people you're serving. If you can manage this, is awesome. So reviewing feedback that people have given anonymously with this broader group and just asking, hey, anybody agree with this, disagree, anybody else have some other feedback? And the topics, those sensitive, once people started sharing, you got like kind of this like avalanche of more people sharing because they saw this person shared their opinion and no one got in trouble for it. So now I feel safe to share my opinion. And that's really what you're trying to do is use that strength in numbers, use that
Is,
evidence that sharing feedback isn't going to get you in trouble and build upon it and build
is,
upon it to where people feel safe to say things that are the most uncomfortable. And when you're in that situation, you can go from there.
is that opposite? Well, first of all, you have an uncanny ability to tie any topic of conversation into gathering feedback, which is
Like
cool.
we do
Which
it,
is a
doing it every day for the past 10 years.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
probably, I should probably get some feedback on my feedback
Feed-
conversations. Yeah,
um,
my wife
no,
probably.
but is that the opposite? Like the strength in numbers idea? Is that the opposite of the anonymous feedback and feeling that psychological safety because it's anonymous because nobody is looking or nobody is watching? Right? Are they two different things?
What do you guys think?
I I personally think they're two different things.
Yeah, I would say they're not opposites as much as they are siblings, right? The goal is psychological safety. It's people saying things without fear, right? And there's different ways for people to get there. So um, think about your relationship with like your wives, right? Know each of your wives. There's things you can say to them that you can't say to anybody else, right? And that they, the things they can say to you that no one else can say to you as well, because there's a relationship there. That's one example of where there's high psychological safety because there's high trust that doesn't require strength in numbers and it doesn't require anonymity, but it's a relationship. A relationship is the very best way to have psychological safety. The problem is relationships break down when you have to do it at scale. I just cannot have a strong relationship with 300 people at my homeless shelter, right? They're transient, they're coming in and out. I'm going to build relationships with you, but I can't build that trust with every single person. So then my question is, how can I do this at scale? And those two things, Mark, you just talked about are two siblings. And
Mhm.
safety provides that psychological safety, and so does the the strength in numbers. Both of those allow you to cross that vulnerability gap that exists that allows people to go from the things they want to say to the things they're actually willing to say. And it builds them that bridge so they can get the things they want to say across to the part where they're actually willing to say it. That makes sense?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, and really, we haven't gotten into like maybe precursor to all of this is the trust. And you're talking about those one-on-one relationships, which are best and just not scalable. So most of the organizations that we work with are like, how can we at least do the best version of this for us, for our real world scenario where we're serving, multiple individuals a day, sometimes hundreds, and it's just not scalable.
Totally.
Right.
And if you're talking about our role in technology, right, we bring a very particular tool to tackle a very particular problem. But we've told plenty of groups, hey, this tool is not the right thing for you because you don't have this problem. Groups that are only serving 10 people a month, this is not a technology tool. Your best option there is a relationship tool. It's building trust because that's no longer a scale problem. Right. And so I think the important thing is to figure out, what am I missing? What tool do I actually need? And use that tool for the population that you're dealing with. Because truthfully, if you're spending time and energy building those relationships with every person, it probably means you're not doing the other things for those people that they actually are here for. Right. And so getting feedback is incredibly important, but it's not something you should put above actually solving the issue. If you get a whole bunch of feedback from everybody, but they're not housed, they're not fed, they're not served, they're not healed, whatever it is you're doing, then that defeats the purpose. And so we want you to be able to get feedback using the right tools, so it takes as little time as possible to achieve the most gain, so you can do what you're best at and move on from there.
Yeah. Well, question I have, just was thinking about that whole trust thing. So if let's just say we're not talking to the organizations that are serving 10 people and that one-on-one relationship can't be there. Hopefully you can build that, or your employee or frontline staff can build that on a case-by-case basis where possible. What can organizations do when it comes to feedback? How does someone build trust? Or maybe the opposite approach. What breaks trust?
Great.
And that's the one that comes to mind for me, that I see examples of what we tell people not to do to start out with.
So maybe an example of this. So for people that don't know and don't have context, so the three of us are brothers-in-law, right? So we're all family, and over the Christmas break, there was a bunch of sleepovers where the cousins all slept together, right? And my daughter was spending the night at Rem's house, and this doesn't go well for us at the moment. So unsurprising, I don't know what time it was, 11 o'clock, something like that, get a call from Briz. And she says, hey, can you come get me? Sure, great. Go up, pick her up, get her in the car, and she apologizes, right? Like, I tried so hard, blah, blah, blah. And I remember telling her, like, I will always come and get you. Like I will always do this. That's fine. It's not a big deal. Like, I make that promise, right? Promises tend to be, whether explicit or implicit, tend to be the root of all trust, right? Yep. And so when I make that promise to her, starting this little seed of trust that happens. And every time I keep that promise, it builds trust. And it's a cycle, right? If I promise something, I keep the promise, they see the evidence of that, I now trust even more. And it, the seed blossoms into a bigger thing. The quickest way for my daughter to lose trust is for me to promise something and then not deliver. Now, when you think about that in an organization setting, rarely do organizations make explicit promises. I mean, we do, they're contracts, right? But most of the time, they're implicit promises. I'm promising you a good meal, a warm bed, a safe place, quality doctors, whatever it is, right? It's implied by the fact that I'm coming into this building that it's going to be here. And so the way that we build trust is through these same steps over and over again. Which, interestingly, if you have your book copies and you open it up and you look at the feedback loop is asking for feedback, collecting it, analyzing it, implementing a solution, and notifying people of it. It is literally just the trust loop broken down into little smaller segments where I understand what your problem is and I make some promise, implicit or explicit, to try and fix whatever issue it is you have, and then notify you and tell you it and show you the evidence. And when you see the evidence, the trust builds and you move forward.
Yep. Just today with Alicia or Alexis on the call, she's like, we have a suggestion box and I have thought seriously about taking it down. and she knew that they weren't doing right by the comments going into those.
Yeah.
She just knew it, and she wanted to do better. It's not a bad thing. It's not. It's human nature, right? But it's the system, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So I gotta, and I hope this doesn't derail, but there's how do we if we break that loop, or if we break that promise and lose that trust, is 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 it hopeless at that point? And how do we gain that trust from there? Um, I got a daughter situation that happened as well last night. Um, I guess there was conversations about allowing my daughter to have my 14-year-old to have a 13-year-old to have a phone when she turns 14. And she said promises were made, and I said no, I never made that promise. And it's not till you're 16 till you get the phone. And there was there was a very emotional reaction, and I think a lot of trust that was broken from that conversation. And my daughter was still very upset even this morning after a night of sleep. Um, so how do we regain that trust? How do organizations regain that trust? Maybe the people that they've been serving or working with, um, they've lost all that trust. Um, Maybe because situation dealing with one of the caretakers, um, or even the organization as a whole hasn't been there to help anyone. Like, can that trust um, be recovered?
Yeah, I think absolutely, uh, and it has to be. Otherwise, I think you cease to exist as an organization. So there have to be people that trust your organization enough to come in and partake in the services that you're offering. In human services organizations, it's tricky because sometimes it's not. Uh, the choices are very limited. We'll put it that way. And as you guys know, we got early on when we were kind of designing and thinking about how to position the product, we had the 5-star scale, and often it was like, oh, this is like Yelp for homeless services. And it's like, except for there's not one on every corner, and you can just, if you don't like the services there, you can just take your dollars elsewhere. It doesn't work like that. And so we had to think about it differently. But so there are definitely some nuances to it. People will have to show up, but I think your funding, the way that you stay in business as a nonprofit, majority of the organizations that we're talking to are going to be nonprofits. So to answer your question, Mark, I would say absolutely not. Never take that mentality. Can trust get broken every day? Absolutely. Is it beyond the point of repair? Absolutely not. You do have to start somewhere, but I think what we tell everybody is trust isn't built by asking for feedback. It's built by what you do next. And it doesn't have to be doing just the things that people ask for, like, I want a phone, Dad. It's here's what we've heard, and here's our game plan. Even just saying, hey, I hear you that you want this phone. I hear that you want this service X, Y, and Z, or a hot tub in the lobby, whatever it is. Um, just letting them know, hey, we've heard you, and it's not just a black suggestion box that goes nowhere. That's how you start building that back up.
Actually, there's a really good example of implicit versus explicit promises, right? An implicit promise is something that people assume are made. Now, I'm going to make the assumption that Abigail here assumed that this promise was made, right? But obviously it wasn't. And this happens to organizations all over the place where people assume they've made some sort of promise, some sort of commitment that's not there. My wife works for a company, and they've just brought on this new software, right? And they sat through all these sales meetings, and now that the software's been signed and they're implementing it, they're saying, wait a minute, like, we thought it did all of these things that we felt like we were sold on. And I think it's a really good example of they were sold on implicit promises things they had assumed were there, assumed were part of it, compared to the actual explicitness. And without that explicit promise, it leads to a negative experience, right? And so one of the things you can learn as an organization is one of the ways to build trust is to be very clear and explicit of what you are promising. If you're a social service organization that is giving out food, let them know what type of food it is, when it is, how they're getting it, where it comes from, right? The more they understand the rules of engagement, the less they're going to be surprised, and the less those surprises will break trust, right? Because you can meet that expectation. You're setting expectation. Another thing to think of, Fred Reichheld came up with a thing called Net Promoter Score, right? Fairly famous. He worked at Bain, and he wanted to find a way to measure companies, how they're doing. And so this idea is what we're going to do is we're going to measure, will people promote you to somebody else, basically, right? And he broke it up into there's three groups. There's promoters, there's detractors, and there's kind of the neutral in the middle, right? And in order to be a promoter, you have to rank something on kind of a 1 to 10 scale above an 8, right? Then you have a whole bunch of neutrals, and then you have those below that are considered detractors. Now, all of that's fine, right? It's nice to know how many promoters you have. It's nice to know detractors. The real thing that he discovered, though, that made him famous and made this so amazing and that's completely forgotten, is that the people that had the best experience overall with these companies were the detractors that they could turn into promoters. Because when people have a bad experience and I can understand they've had a bad experience and I can go to them and I fix that experience, that in and of itself becomes a bigger trust builder than if things had just gone perfectly. In fact, we are so attuned to ourselves.
I love that.
Things go purposely, or when things go the way they should, we don't even notice the process go through, right? I go to Walmart, I buy something at the self-checkout. I don't think about the self-checkout. I don't think of how good it was. I don't think of any of that stuff. I just move along with my life because I'm myopically focused. I'm focused on me, right? When something breaks, however, it breaks this inner focus on me. And it gives an opportunity for the group that's struggling to all of a sudden have this highlight moment where they can be front and center and show how awesome they really are. And so for groups out there, you know, when we have these moments where we break trust, where we make a mistake, things are happening, stuff breaks, right? People are upset, people say the wrong thing, whatever it is actually the best opportunity you have to build trust long term, even when trust may have taken a small step back. And you can do that by being explicit about what you're promising, about how you're promising to fix it, about the fact that you heard them and you are promising to fix it. And by helping see them through that process, you can move them from those detractors to those promoters really overnight. Interestingly enough, in all of the research, they never really ever moved people in the neutral into promoters, right? It was always those that have the poor experience that allowed you to get to the positive eventually.
All right, so pop quiz for each one of us. First two companies that come to mind, or just experience, but whatever company was in charge of that experience that comes to mind when you're thinking about that process. Like, I became a detractor, or if they had asked me a survey right at that point when I was frustrated, I mentioned something, and then I became a promoter. The first two that pop in my head, one has a definite experience of where I was like frustrated, and then I don't know if I was asked a survey, but it got better, and it even though I wasn't asked a survey in both scenarios, it solidified me as like I'm in their camp. First one is Amazon. Like, something goes wrong, a policy that I didn't expect, or it's outside of the norm. One of those situations where everyone generally is happy with Amazon processes until you're not. And then it was outside of a normal process. I was frustrated at how hard it was to get to their chat customer support. Finally, when I got there, super pleasant experience, took care of what I needed, done. And I'm like, oh, that's why I pay for the Prime membership. And then Amex is another one, American Express. Similar with a couple of different scenarios, whether it's just like refunding something that was a reoccurring charge that I didn't know it was even on there, couldn't get a hold of the company, was getting nothing, and Amex is like, we'll take care of it.
It's awesome.
Yeah. And so all of a sudden I'm like super happy about it.
I've got one that comes to mind off the top of my head, and it was IKEA. We ordered a lamp years ago, right? Big, long, tall lamp that kind of has a shade type of thing, right? And so it had this big metal bar that it goes up in, and it showed up bent, right? The bar was bent. So I called IKEA's customer support, and they're walking through with me and said, "Great, we'll issue a refund if you want, or we'll send you out a new one." And I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna do it." And the guy on the phone says, "Hey, look, those bars, you can bend them back." And he's like, "I'm gonna issue a refund. Take it outside, step on it. It's gonna bend back. Go back. You're gonna have a lamp that works, and you're gonna get your money back and come buy something else at IKEA." Totally still have the lamp. The lamp is straight as an arrow, and I totally bought more things from IKEA.
Awesome.
Right. And so it was a really good example of like bad experience. Wasn't the worst experience, right? Like I was pretty certain I was going to get the lamp back, but it went from being this thing where it's like a little bit of a negative experience to all of a sudden being a super positive experience. And you know what? That entire thing probably cost IKEA $35, but we shop at IKEA all the time now.
They've made that money back.
Yep, easily, just
Right.
from me.
How about you, Mark?
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to figure out how I can be redeemed from Abigail. Um, so I'm hoping you guys can provide some good ideas here.
So the Abigail situation is an interesting one.
Well, I've been thinking about that one, like, not to solve that problem on here, but it does make me, from an organizational standpoint, I think your point about like, people are going to complain about food, but if we're clear at the communication, so I would argue that there's a communication breakdown. From a parenting perspective, this isn't a parenting podcast, but from a parenting perspective, I think the right thing to do by both of you is stick to your guns of, no, this is what your mom and I have talked about, and this is what we feel is best for you. You're going to disagree with that. But setting those boundaries and those expectations, that lesson right there goes forever longer than her having to wait 2 more years for Instagram or whatever it is.
You know, I wonder, I agree with it. I wonder how it would go if you sat down with her and say, "Here's an actual contract that I will let you have a phone when you're 16, or I will pay you $4,000." Right. And so it is a very explicit, this is what it is. We're going to write this. We're going to put it in this place. You know where it is. This is no longer, I said, you said, this is here. This is what this is.
Because if you put it into an organizational context, it's someone submitted like, how was your experience? Very poor. Oh, tell us more about that. You said I was going to get X at this date, and that's not happening. Okay, I hear you, Abigail. It sounds like we've had some miscommunications. Trying to go back and clear that up, that's an impossible task, right? But the thing that I can do as an organization is make it very clear, so you know what to expect, so that miscommunication doesn't happen again. So to your question earlier, Mark, of is it pointless now? Is that trust broken? Is it just broken and it's pointless going forward? No, I think that's the easy way to repair it, is be as clear as you can. And here's, sorry, I don't know how or why that happened, but I think the only fruitful thing we can do is get on the same page together.
You know,
And it might not be her way.
Yep. I think another useful thing to think about, Mark, is, and I feel like I come back to this every podcast, but think of it in context of working out, right? Missing a workout doesn't kill all the gains you had before. Stopping working out will, right? And so when we're gathering feedback, when we're doing anything that's building trust, breaking trust is human. We all break trust all the time. And we tend to break trust with the people we care about the most often, right? Because we have the most opportunities to. But breaking trust in and of itself doesn't tend to lose all trust. Doing it over time, one after another, after another, after another, that tends to be the real issue, right? And when you think of big problems that people have in relationships, when this is partnerships that break down or marriages that fall apart or whatever, it's rarely one instance that broke trust. Most of the time, it is the sum accumulation of things over time that have broken trust, and that may all come to light at the same time, but often it's this accumulation. Same thing's true when we're gathering feedback, when we're doing any of this, when we're trying to build trust. The accumulation of the work matters more than any one particular instance.
So
can I throw out one more topic here on trust that we can talk about for just a few minutes? there's another thing of trust that I think is important in this context that people don't talk often enough about. And this one is a choice, right? It's the willingness for an organization to trust the people they serve enough to ask for feedback.
100%.
I think we see this all the time where people just legitimately do not trust that people will give them good feedback, that they know what they're talking about, that they can put aside their emotion or whatever it is to give feedback that matters. And so this is one of the biggest barriers to me of organizations building quality feedback loops is I just don't trust the people I serve.
Yeah. And maybe it's another assumption that comes along with this. It's almost trusting their gut too much as well. Like I know our clients, I know who I work with. And in some ways, if they wanted to say something, they would. And so they chalk up silence as satisfaction.
Oh, we just wrote a great white paper on this that talks about the expertise illusion, right?
That's right.
Where when you think that you are the expert in something because you are around it, proximity to something does not necessarily lead to expertise.
Yep.
Right. So I can be next to someone experiencing some sort of trauma. That doesn't make me the expert on that trauma. It makes me informed on it. It gives me more expertise than other people. However, it is human nature when I'm near something often to make me think I'm an expert in it when I'm not the actual person in that thing. I think one of the best ways to think about this is, have you ever been in a situation where someone you're working with leaves and you've been next to them, you think you know their job, but all of a sudden, maybe some of that job falls to you. You're like, I don't actually know how to do this. I know that they uploaded YouTube videos, but I don't know how to do this, right? I know they, did sales calls, but I don't know how to do this, right? It's that illusion of expertise. Because I'm near it, I think I understand it.
Yeah. Or to phrase that in another way, I thought their job was easy. Turns out it's not.
I mean, that is probably the most human of emotions when it comes to those type of things, right?
Yeah.
That happens to all of us. But even when you think their job's hard, you may still think like, oh, that's a very complex thing, but I've seen them do it 100 times, right? It's the difference between watching Steph Curry shoot a basketball and understanding how to shoot it yourself. So I think that is one of the big issues that you run into when they don't trust other people. They don't trust because they already think they know best. Now, I don't mean to be critical of people in these situations. That is an incredibly human thing that happens to all of us. And so the goal here isn't to try and shame someone by saying, you think you're an expert because of this thing. It's being able to try and say, hey, wait a minute, maybe I am not the expert. And to get everybody to take a step back and say, wait a minute, maybe there's expertise that I don't know that I can then seek out. Reminds me a little bit of, there's a famous basketball coach, Eric Spoelstra, right? Coach of Miami Heat. At one point, he went and got ideas for his basketball team from a football coach.
It's like a Ted Lasso situation.
Yeah, it was kind of a weird thing, right? And I remember thinking about that, like, why? And Eric Spoelstra has a great point when he says, good ideas don't come from monopolies. No one has a monopoly on good ideas. And so I'm willing to ask anyone and everyone where I can get those ideas from. And when we can put ourselves in that situation where we say, hey, you know what? I'm going to overcome the expertise illusion. I'm going to set that aside because that is not real. It is an illusion. And I'm going to say there are things that I can learn from other people, including the people I serve, and I'm going to choose to trust them. Then all of a sudden the magic can happen. And I can find things that we can act on. And by acting upon, I can build trust with them. And conversely, when they give you good feedback, the trust you have in them increases as well, right? It's this virtual cycle that grows.
100%.
And so that's really, I guess, where I kind of leave off and encourage people here is work on building that trust, both internally of how you trust the people you serve and how they trust you by listening and responding.
Almost the opposite of strength in numbers on the listening side of take that one voice, trust it. You don't need a bunch of numbers to say that comment is important, as it is.
And really, the strength in numbers thing is interesting because a lot of times that's showing a lack of trust. If I, as an organization, say I need 70 people to tell me this thing before I say it's legit, like how many people do you need to tell you your house is on fire before you do something about it?
Yeah.
Right. And so that's one of the things to think about is, hey,
I'd like to hope it's one.
Yep. Like you've got to be willing to trust enough and allow yourself to be vulnerable enough to get this feedback to be able to turn this engine. And when you do, the engine will run.
Love it. Mark, anything else before we wrap up?
No, thanks for joining. Thanks for watching and listening.
Did we solve your teenager conundrum?
We'll see. Let's have a follow-up podcast
You
on
gave
it.
me some strength in numbers. We'll follow up. Okay,
Yeah,
so
if you need, I will tell Abigail she can't have a phone. I'm perfectly willing to do that.
and I can also tell her
Yeah.
that we gave Dawson one way too early.
There you go.
Bad
Yeah.
cousin influence there. Okay, well, next podcast is podcast number 7, but going over chapter 6, and it's how organizations can improve or work on their feedback systems, and what else? And do things that lead to more reliable responses.
Awesome. I'm excited.
Okay.
Catch us later.